Ambassador Vice Admiral Khan Hisham bin Siddiq. It is my pleasure to briefly introduce him to the audience. Ambassador Vice Admiral Khan Hisham joined Pakistan Navy in 1978 and has 17. Before joining Ipri as President in March 2019, he was Pakistan's ambassador to Saudi Arabia on cooperation. Vice Admiral Khan Hisham holds a Master's in Joint Warfare and War Studies from Quaid-e-Azam University, Islamabad. He did his MPhil in Public Policy and Strategic Security Management from the National Defence University, Pakistan. Vice Admiral Khan Hisham is a recipient of Satara-e-Imtiaz Military and Hilal-e-Imtiaz.
Citizen Amendment Act, as we call it, on issues of critical importance, which are urgent and also as they relate to particularly the. So today's session will be a focused discussion, and all those who want to participate or are here in the audience, and this will be more of a professional exchange rather than just a seminar where the ideas which are relevant and also of scholarly intent, so that we can understand the mechanics of the today's topic. Let me just say that things between India and Pakistan have gone bad to worse during the last 2019, and the trend continues in 2020 as well. Obviously, the watershed event was the revocation of 370 and Article 35A, and then on 5th December 2019, this Citizen Amendment Act came into force, and as they say, the hell broke loose. So it is important for Pakistan to understand objectively and dispassionately as to what does it entail with respect to Indian future internal cohesion and their standing as a state in the world. They were touted as the largest democracy, and also the most, their Indian, the 42nd Amendment of Indian Constitution clearly states that India is a secular state. But interestingly, it does not separate religion from the state, the same very act. So where do this stand as a democratic polity amongst the Committee of Nations, and what are the implications with respect to Pakistan? Should we reinforce this and let them go down the drain as we anticipate, or as most people observe that this is something which is not good for India? So should Pakistan, as a sort of a state which would want to see India go down the drain, should we allow this to happen, or should we take a principled stance for people who are marginalized, and the people, especially the Muslim brethren who have been singled out? Should we stand up for them and be counted for promoting their rights across the world? Obviously, the rise of populism and nationalism across the globe has had an effect not only in Europe, in the US, but we see it very pronouncedly taking roots in India. I'm sure today's speakers will talk about it more, and I leave the floor at this time to our experts, and hopefully we'll have some fruitful discussions after that. Thank you so much once again, sir, for coming, and we are all ears. Thank you.
The presentation will be delivered by Dr. Muhammad Mujib Afzal. Dr. Afzal is an assistant professor at the School of Politics and International Relations, Quaid-e-Azam University, Islamabad. He is also the author, who is currently serving as the director of Center of Excellence for International Law at the National
demands of the dominant elite middle class through discourse and data manipulation. Dominant social equitative values and finance distribution to condition, limit, facilitate. These censuses are conducted and the way the data is collected and used contribute to the construction and socialization of the masses in identity constructs. My argument is that data collection is not a neutral process. It reflects a social interaction or create one accordance with the discourse of the dominant social elite middle class. In Indian subcontinent, it was the discourse of Orientalism and the essential senses of population and housing that helped create the modern identities of caste, class, and community. That was resulted in the creation of Indian Muslim, Hindu, upper and lower caste, and region and regional identities. And it was on the basis of these identities that India or the Raj was partitioned between India and Pakistan. And that is where the competition is taking place in India. In post-independence, Indian discourse was on socialism and secularism and composite culture that reflected into an electoral or competed itself in electoral democracy. It created the structure of majoritarianism where everything that was written in the constitution, whether it was secularism or equal rights, were interpreted in accordance with the ethos of the majority. And at the same time, this Indian identity created a minoritarianism where minority did have a space to define itself and preserve its identity markers. In this social structure, it created a language-based regional structure that was resulted in a political federation that India exists today. India is a highly centralized state according to its constitution, but it is the functioning of this political electoral system that India now exists as a federation. And thirdly, it created reservations for the lower caste and entirely created a new culture and polity of the lower caste politics, where we have this Samajwadi Party and Bahujan Samaj Party. They are competing for the caste vote, and it is this caste vote that is being struggled with the BJP today. Secondly, it was not a system that was creating equality between all these people or all these groups, but it was a system that was creating space for all of them, where they defined themselves and coexisted with each other. Minorities, lower caste, and tolerance for the diverse culture was the byproduct of this Indian structure. The alternative discourse of Hindu nationalism denounced this as a minority appeasement, pseudo-secularism that robbed Hindus of their rightful place in Hindu India and created a soft India. The argument was that essentially Hindus were robbed from their opportunity to have a Hindu state of their own, to live in accordance with their own cultural values and ethos. And the kind of a fragmented India that Indian identity has created a soft India that do not have the kill power. It cannot sustain and assert its power at an international level. So it was manipulated by the minority inside and externally by the majority Muslims outside. So they wanted to restructure this India. That will be socially hierarchical state, where Hindus will be the dominant one and others will be the subordinate. Hindu ethos will be given primacy, and the others' ethos, history, and symbols will take the secondary position. 1998 to 2004 and 2014 to 2018, this process of soft Hindutva was introduced. It created a Hindu vote bank and an conducive environment for its survival. Through the processes of cow protection, the Gau Raksha movement, the so-called love jihad propaganda, or the Ghar Wapsi schemes, or this entire discourse of Shuddhi, where they wanted to reconvert the Muslims of Hindu origin, Muslim and Christian of Hindu origin, back to Hinduism. There is virtually no conversion process in Hinduism, but this Shuddhi, that is basically a purification ritual for the Brahmins that is being used to reconvert the Muslims and the Christians of the Hindu origin back to Hinduism. This nationalist, and then it was added with the nationalist discourse of patriotism and security of India. 2019 electoral victory compelled BJP to move towards the hard Hindutva. So it took very serious actions, like first time Muslim personal law was tampered and 3 talaq controversy was settled. Second, it amended the Article 370 and 35A to change the status and the pattern of interaction of Indian Union with the state of Kashmir. And it was after 150 years that the issue of Ram Mandir was settled through a legalistic process. Citizen Amendment Act 2019, National Population Register NPR, and their link with the National Register of Citizens can be best understood in this environment. Citizen Amendment Act of 2019 amended the Citizen Act of 1955 that provide essentially the persecuted minorities that have migrated from Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan of Hindu, Sikh, Buddhist, Jain, Parsi, and Christian origin to have a fast-track process of getting citizenship within India. It was the first time in India that the religious basis for the citizenship was added. Previously, it was birth, descent, naturalization, or registration that provided the basis of a citizenship. It essentially created a process through which Muslims can be filtered out. And it is creating a social process through which Muslims can be subordinated to the entire structure. Essentially, it started from Assam, but in Assam there was no differentiation between Muslims and non-Muslims. Essentially in Assam, the entire structure was designed against the Bengali migrants, whether they were Hindu or the Muslims. Thirdly, only Muslim majority states have been picked up in the neighborhood. They have not mentioned about Sri Lanka or Nepal, clearly saying that essentially it is these Muslim majority states that are the security threat, where minorities are being persecuted, and minorities that are Hindu in Muslim states do not have a protection. If minority Hindu do not have protection in majority Muslim states, minority Muslims cannot claim the same rights in a Hindu majority state. It also created a fast-track process for these migrated Hindus to get citizenship within 6 years. Previously, the residency requirement was 12 years. In National Population Register, essentially is a process through which they were trying to develop an identity database based on demography and biometrics, to have house-to-house surveys and talk about the welfare schemes and others. It was also an amendment in 1935 Citizen Act, in 2003 under the Vajpayee regime. So it was again a project of the Hindu nationalists. It basically argued that the usual resident should be counted. Usual resident is a person who is living in a locality for 6 months or desired to live in a locality for 6 months. UPA government also, after the Bombay terrorist attack, picked it up. And in 2010, they also had the house listing. 2015 again, door-to-door data collection was done. And on basis of this, UPA government did issue a national identity card, almost 10 states, but it was not a compulsory process. Essentially, they then moved to another phenomena that was called Aadhaar. It is basically a 12-digit unique identity number that will be given to every Indian, and that's where its data will be collected. But it was not compulsory one. It was optional. BJP in its 2009 manifesto wanted to create a multi-purpose national identity card, which was a compulsory requirement for all the Indians. This time, when they announced house-to-house listing from April to September 2020 and population enumeration February 9 to 28, 2021, they allocated money for this population process as well. And this time, it is designed to identify doubtful citizens as well. And they have declared that it is linked with the National Register of the Citizen. National Register of the Citizen is essentially a process through which they wanted to identify doubtful citizens and illegal migrants. Here, the burden of proof is on the resident, not on the state. Simply self-declaration that I have been living here, my parents, fathers were here, is not enough. They have to come up with the proof, and proof which is accepted at the local registrar office. If it is not accepted, you will be arrested and sent to a detention camp. And also, money was allocated within this notification for the building of detention camps, and some of the detention camps have been opened, and it is claimed by the opposition that they are operational as well. Generally, in this entire process, 12 questions was asked, especially the first process, the national population of the register. BBC, Bharatiya Janata Party is arguing that the first two processes of census and NPR is not linked with NRC, the registration process. It has no link with that. But first time in population register, they have added an additional clause of which requires that you have to tell the date and the place of your parents, the birth of your parents. And if you cannot, you will not be registered. That's where the link of the first two processes, the Act, population survey, and the national registration of the citizens of India is created, where now Muslims can be filtered out. Amit Shah claimed, and he did claim, that virtually it's no link of NPR with the NRC, but at the same time, in a same press conference, he defines the infiltrators as termites who will be rooted out from India. So, opposition in India is saying it is against the basic idea of India, the secularism, and it is unconstitutional because it violates the Article 14th of the equality of all citizens before law. For BJP and the Sangh Parivar, It is the opportunity to institutionalize the gains of soft Hindutva. Virtually, when they were going for 3 talaq, Article 370, and the Babri Masjid, there was no opposition. Rather, even Congress was following the themes of the soft Hindutva. In Madhya Pradesh, in Rajasthan, where they are in a majority and the governing. So everybody was on board. And there were a number of opposition parties who supported the entire process which BJP was following. So they say it is the right time to institutionalize the hierarchical Hindu communal state, where Hindu ethos will have the primacy and others will be subordinated. Secondly, they thought it's a compulsion both for Modi and Amit Shah. Young activists of the Sangh Parivar wanted to have the concrete results. They supported them and worked for them in 2014, and they are working for them in 2018 and 19 election, and they wanted to have a payback. So there was a compulsion on this dual group of Amit Shah and Modi to deliver something. They have to be concrete. They are part of the identity politics, and now identity politics should be delivering something. So, through this census process, the entire consensus of 1950 of the Nehruvian state should be replaced. That was the demand, and they were trying to deliver on this demand. Thirdly, in India, the national election and the state election have been bifurcated since 1971 under Mrs. Indira Gandhi. National issues have been de-linked from the state issues, or the provinces, the unit issues. So if you are governing at the center, you may not be governing at the state level. For an overall period, it is fine. But if you do not have a support of the state governments, all these projects cannot be implemented. More than 7 states have refused to implement the process of this new census, Act, and the NPR. So you need to have support of the states as well. Modi charisma is working at the center. But at the state level, issues are different. And there appears that it is not working. And on December 23rd, BJP lost election in Jharkhand. That was the first. For BJP, it is important to win the election of Bengal, April 2021, and then UP election of February 2022. If they cannot win this election, virtually there will be serious question mark for the survival of the third term, or second term and then the third term for the Modi. Modi to emerge as a Nehru of the right. So they have to create a new polity. The Ram Mandir politics with the settlement of the Babri Masjid has lost its value. So this is seen as a new opportunity, an opportunity which can create a new direction for the Bharatiya Janata Party at the lower level. So in Jamia or Shaheen Bagh, the Muslim or the non-Muslim or the over presence of the Muslims or the Muslim alone concept that is resisting the Act, the Citizenship Act and the NPR is essentially profitable, electorally profitable for the BJP. BJP vote bank is not declining, rather it is rising. In 2014, they won election with 31% vote. This time, it was 36.3% votes. At that time, almost 9% vote of Congress was stolen by the BJP. This time, even the regional parties and the caste parties lost their votes to the BJP. So BJP has to come up with this new strategy where Muslim face is getting support, especially in the Western UP. Western UP, this Muslim alone concept is still selling. And that again, communal feeling is creating new opportunities for the BJP. So BJP is insisting upon this entire process. For rest of India, it's virtually a process of second partition. The first partition was political and geographical. This partition is social. India is only for the Hindus, will not go well with the minority, 25 crore Muslim. It's not a small minority, it's a majority in its own right. So it is creating a perpetual social conflict for India, which is politically beneficial to the BJP, but maybe in a longer period of time not will be beneficial for the India. Last point. It is the first resistance to the creation of Hindu communal state. If this failed, that is a combination of Muslims and the left. Both are the declining polities in India. They are really heading for a hierarchical, reactionary India for the leftists and for the minorities both. Thank you very much.
More from a technical legal perspective. उसके बाद मैं आपको international law, areas of international law which it affects. But then in the end, I will focus. This has already been explained very well by Professor Saab. I'll explain this through this chart. So, as was pointed out, the Citizen Amendment Act is an amendment to the Citizen Act of 1955 and the Citizen Rules of 2003. So, you have the National Registry of Citizens. If you produce a full set of documents as according to the rules, and here if you can show proof of your religion, if you are a Hindu, Sikh, Jain, Buddhist, Christian, or you are from Pakistan, Afghanistan, or Bangladesh, you can become a legal citizen. If you are from elsewhere,
Mr. Jamal Aziz.